me leaving a steady income for stepping out on my own was,
Scary.
questionable. Yeah, it was questionable. So it was one of those things where...
Let's talk about that.
What's up, everybody? My name is Adam, and I'm the host of the UKnowAdamTsang podcast, the show that is dedicated on bringing on passionate people, learning about their stories, and delivering value to entrepreneurs. So if that's what you're interested in, go ahead and follow, like, and subscribe. You know what I'm saying?
How's it going, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the UKnowAdamTsang podcast, where you get to know a little bit more about people, passions, and all things business. Today, sitting across the way is a good dear friend of mine, Mr. Patrick White, or better yet known as Chef Patrick White. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
Absolutely. It's been a long time coming, to say the least. Chef, I am so happy to have you here. For those that don't know, let's talk a little bit about the services that you provide to this area.
I call myself an executive private chef. Former executive chef, former sous chef, all that good stuff. But I mainly focus on private chefing and traveling to different cities and cooking for people in their homes.
Very nice.
So it's pretty much like the specialty of it is like it's a pop-up dinner right there in your home.
Okay.
So that's where, the pride and joy comes from. There's a little bit of catering every now and then for the most part, but as far as like buffet style versus plating courses, multiple courses, private chefing is mostly multiple courses.
Love that. So, as a chef, food is obviously something that you love, and I actually love your food. I've tasted your food before, very familiar with it. It actually comes up in my dreams at times, but tell me a little bit about how you got into this industry.
So as far as the private chefing goes, or as far
just kind of like the beginning, right? Take me back to day one. When did you know that you were going to take this direction?
Definitely high school. It started in high school. I had some inspirations before high school throughout my childhood, as cooking, family time, and my favorite holidays was always Thanksgiving and Christmas, where most of the food was out. So I always had those inspirations, but day one was probably high school, where we had these cooking competitions in high school. I was part of LCC LA, and
where'd you go to high school at?
Southeast Bullock.
Okay.
Yeah, Southeast Bullock, and it was great because I was into sports. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to go to a small community college for football, but of course I hurt myself, and I was in a dilemma, in a kind of a limbo where I was gonna go. And my culinary teacher, Miss Cynthia Lovett, I gotta mention her name because
shout out.
I gotta give her props, and she pushed me towards doing these cooking competitions, and it kind of intrigued me because we came in second place during the region competition. We would have get Statesboro High and Portal and Claxton, I think, some other schools. And I was like, okay, we came in second place. We cooked some chicken scampi and some kind of blueberry salad with some balsamic vinaigrette or something. And then the top two in the region go to state. And so we came in second place again at state. This is, going against schools from Atlanta, East Georgia, West Georgia.
Yeah.
And, I'm like, okay, the competition is still there. So it's like that competitiveness kind of lured me into thinking, okay, what is this about really? Because I didn't know what a chef was. Everybody has an idea what a chef is, somebody who cooks. Some guy with a white coat or a white hat and stuff like that. So
love the hat, by the way.
Yeah, thank you. So,
I'm gonna have to get me one. I gotta rob me one of those.
Yeah, it works.
Love it.
But yeah, so I just got intrigued with it. So I knew then I wanted to look into it. As soon as I graduated high school, I went straight to culinary school and got intrigued with it even more. Learning from the professors there at Okeechee Tech, right there in Statesboro. Chef Brian, at the time, Chef Tony.
Chef Tony.
And they're great professors. They were so, very, very important to my journey of learning or, having interest in it. So culinary school kind of gave me the basics and kind of intrigued me a little more because we talked about different cuisines, different cultures, different backgrounds of food and the history of it and the professionalism. And so that kind of, all right, so that was probably day one of me thinking, like, this could be something I could look into. I didn't know if it was going to be a forever thing yet, but, I knew that I wanted to kind of dive into it.
Take me back to, like, back in the day when you were growing up, and, what is your first memory of cooking?
Okra. That's the first thing that pops in my head.
Interesting.
Yeah, because
how was it made? Deep fried okra? We fry everything in the South.
This one was stewed.
Okay.
And I remember it specifically because it was terrible because of the sliminess. But I remember it because it was like my dad cooked it. He cooks.
Oh, he does cook?
Yeah, he does cook. He's probably the best cook in our family for the most part.
Snap.
So it's hard to say that, but he's a great cook, and he cooked this slimy okra. And I remember everybody else in the house don't like okra. It was just him.
Yeah.
So for some reason, one, I was made to eat it. So he made me eat it. We don't waste food around there. So I remember the sliminess and the salt and pepper and, just not understanding what it was. But I knew that, it was food. And so that was one of the main memories I always go back to because now as a chef and as a Southern chef, I have a love for okra.
Yeah.
I respect it. I love it. It's very tasty and the history of it is amazing. But so now I go back to that first memory of me not liking okra and being made to eat the slime and stuff like that. And then me, 10, 20 years later, learning how to cook okra 10 different ways. So that's
comes full circle.
Yeah, comes full circle. So that's one of the first memories. And then, of course, we used to do a lot of barbecuing growing up. Back when I was like very young, like 2-3 years old, we had a couple of hogs in our backyard. Okay. So it wasn't really a farm per se, but we had some pigs back there, and we did whole barbecues. So I remember doing that, being part of that. We had a big grill, and we'll cook whole hogs and barbecues. Then I remember us getting wild quail. We used to cook a lot of wild quail. We used to get like the crate full of like hundreds of quail, clean them, cook them right there on site. So as I became a chef, I started to go back to those memories that those really, stuck with me because I really enjoyed that. That was the most important moments of my life. Having family and food all in one umbrella. Really,
so you were exposed to cooking at a very early age then?
Yeah, definitely.
Right? Like
definitely.
I think that a lot of times, that those important memories kind of like at that age kind of like proliferate through, when you're starting to like go to class and kind of like show interest in like other things.
Exactly.
How about, in terms of, inspiration in like on TV? Were there any chefs that were you watching kind of like, was Food Network a thing at this time?
In high school, yeah. In high school, I was very, very into the Food Network. That was definitely my favorite channel. Maybe even before I started doing the cooking competitions that kind of led to, I started I love Chopped. That was my favorite all-time show. Still is to this day. I love Chopped. That's what get my creativity and my adrenaline going. And but Hell's Kitchen, of course, Gordon Ramsay. Just watching him. So at the time, Food Network, watching the other different chefs, the Iron Chef competition and Chef Morimoto and Chef Ramsay. So just watching all that at the time kind of inspired me. But before that, of course, there was a couple cooking shows like Julia Childs on GPB. Used to watch her a little bit. And there's a lot of like traveling shows I used to watch growing up, but not like really into it kind of thing.
Got you.
So I didn't really get into it till high school.
So we're at the point where, you had, I guess, an injury that kind of like kept you from chasing like the sports side of things. And then, you start finding out that there's this competition element of cooking that's super exciting. Do they still hold the competition now?
They do, but unfortunately not at Southeast Bullet. The culinary program dissolved past couple of years. Miss Cynthia Lovett retired after that, but they still have it at Statesboro High, and they still have it in other surrounding counties. I know Claxton and Long County is big. They're big on that, so yes, they still have it.
Got you.
Yeah.
So
it's a whole different ball game now too.
That's right.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, like, so I had a full circle moment. I think it was earlier this year. I went to Claxton High School, and I was a judge for
Love that.
The cooking competitions, the same cooking competitions that I kind of got started on. So it was a full circle moment then. But, you know, just being a judge and watching how those kids move nowadays, they actually have culinary teachers that went to culinary schools that help them now.
Got you.
And coach them.
So you think the level of cooking has increased?
Yes, the level of cooking has increased.
Yeah.
Even though it seems to kind of, you know, there's more opportunities out there now. So it's not just, you know, culinary. You know, you could just be a content creator and just do recipes online and stuff like that instead of being a chef. So though the other avenues have opened up, but the level of cooking has increased.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I was watching, you know, the kids nowadays, they're plating, and they're taking the plating seriously, and the art of it, and you know, what goes with what. I know it's because of the culinary teachers kind of coached them a little bit,
sure,
which
of
is
course.
great. So, but I'm like, you know, I wish I would have had that when I was in high school. But
Got you. So, you know, you get out of high school and you decide to go to culinary school. In between this period of time, did you work at any restaurants?
Well, my first job coming right after high school was Waffle House.
Oh,
Yeah,
snap.
yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah,
That's
so that
why
was
your
the first
food's so
job.
good.
Exactly. Yeah, it wasn't culinary school or learning under the great chefs. It was Waffle House.
Love it.
But yeah, Waffle House, I started I graduated that May, and that same year in September, I started Waffle House.
Yeah.
And I remember trying to find a restaurant job. You know, I think I applied to Ruby Tuesday and you know, Longhorns and places like that. But Waffle House was like the first job that gave me the opportunity.
Sure.
I didn't know what was going on. That was the first time I've ever walked into a Waffle House. You know, how old am I? I'm like 19 at this point. So, you know, I didn't know what Waffle House was. I remember Huddle House. Sure. Because I grew up around the Huddle House. So, you know, me walking into Waffle House and seeing all those cooks and seeing how fast they move and stuff like that, I'm like, okay, they're actually like cooking. And then the management at the time was great, you know, and the cooks at the time was great. So when I was introduced to Waffle House, there was a level of quality that, you know, really doesn't get its just due now. You know, people think it's just for drunk people for the most part.
No, I still like Waffle House, man.
I think
Waffle House is ain't nothing wrong with Waffle House.
Exactly. I think Waffle House is great, man. Like, if you got a great cook and a great management, like, you can get a great plate of food.
Love that.
So, you know, I was introduced, and they, you know, as soon as you walk into an interview, you don't, I think you eat before or after the interview. Either way, you get a plate of food for free. And you know, that was my first time having Waffle House. The hash browns was perfect. It was golden brown. It was crispy, fluffy. The omelet was fluffy and perfect. And it's like, man, they really take a little pride. You know, I thought this was like fast food.
Sure.
But, you know, take a little pride in their food. So I was like, it could be a potential restaurant I could, you know, see myself at. And but yeah, so, you know, Waffle House was my first job that year. And I remember my first great memory there was I was working my butt off because I was still trying to be a chef, and I was still trying to apply to other restaurants, like real restaurants. But you know, I was working my butt off, and the manager at the time, he noticed, and he appreciated it. And right there, 3 months later, I got my first raise. You know, and this was my first job, my first raise. I had a great, you know, concrete finishing job before that with my dad. My dad owned his own concrete finishing, so I worked with him for years. So technically, that's my first job. But my first restaurant job, the Waffle House manager noticed my hard work. He gave me a raise right there on the spot. And usually you'll have to wait at least 6 to 8 months to get your raise. You know, you have to wait a certain amount of time. But And that was my first memory. And then not only that, me mastering grits. We take for granted the small things, especially chefs and cooks nowadays. We take for granted the small things that actually make a great cook.
Yeah.
And people think it's easy to make grits. It's not easy to make grits, especially for if you're cooking a Waffle House, you got to make 5 gallons a day. If that, you got to make 10 gallons a day.
Sure.
So, making grits at a bulk to where they can be perfect throughout they gotta last a couple hours to get you through the day.
Sure.
So you have to make them perfect to where they're still fluffy, they're not watery. So just small things like that I've learned to not take for granted as a chef. Cause I didn't want to be an arrogant chef. I wanted to be one of those chefs that really took advantage of every lesson, every opportunity that came in front of me. Mm-hmm. So I took serious how to make hash browns perfectly, how to make grits perfectly, how to make an omelet in the right technique, keep it fluffy and not add, not overcook your eggs, because we know if you overcook your eggs, the water is going to come out. I was learning the science of it very early.
I love the passion that you have. Like we're talking about Waffle House right now, but you are like getting into the nitty gritty, which is what cooking is about.
Exactly.
Being a chef, being putting out something that you care about and putting passion into your work. Mm-hmm. Is why people will come back time and time again.
Exactly. And
so that's a phenomenal, aspect of kind of like, the things that you do is that you put your heart and soul into it, regardless of what it is, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So how do you get to kind of like what happens after that?
So Waffle House, and then that same year in December, I finally got the call from Emma's Restaurant.
Okay.
So while I was working at Waffle House, I was I was creating my resume. Thank you to my beautiful wife who helped me, build my resume and, get that to a T, to where I can go to a restaurant like Emma's Restaurant. And, I handed up my resume. I went there like 5 to 6 times before I even got a call.
So let's lay some foundation.
Yeah.
Emma's Restaurant was one of the, I think, first restaurants that was joined to a hotel in Statesboro. Yeah. And the person that was behind that concept, I believe, was Jason Scarborough, which in this area is an absolute legend. I think now he actually works as a chef directly for U.S. Foods, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he still does.
He's still over there. Yeah. But he brought a level of cuisine to Statesboro that was unmatched. I think his first restaurant was actually Blue Moon Cafe, which is in the current Tandoor & Tap.
Yep.
It used to be in the Tandoor & Tap, and he just brought something very different, unique to the area. That was absolutely amazing. And then he went over to Emma. So at this point, Emma's is just starting out, or are you coming on board?
Oh, no, I'm coming on board maybe like 3-4 years later.
Okay.
Emma started in 2007. That's when he first opened the doors. And at that time, like you said, it was the first very upscale, fine dining, high quality farm to table restaurant, in Statesboro. So it really changed the game. It trailblazed all the other restaurants that's here now, and that was here in the past. And so I'm coming on board in 2011. And, it was still very upscale and fine dining at the point. But, it was kind of one of those things where it was in between is prime. Mm-hmm. So I started there, like, as soon as I, got the call, and my wife was with me when I got the call from Jason. I remember specifically because it was like, I would say it's one of those first highlights where, as a chef, you dream of.
Yeah.
I hate to underrate it, but at the time it was like a dream to, have a passion to go through culinary school, to work at Waffle House, and then all of a sudden you actually get a phone call from a actual chef. Mm. So I remember that specifically, and so I started there, and I always say I started off as a dishwasher. He hired me on as like a utility cook.
Okay.
But of course you have to, you got to go
earn your stripes.
Yeah, earn your stripes. So I'm washing dishes for the most part, and I'm helping maybe like put up food and maybe prep a little bit, but really mainly dishes. And so I always call myself a dishwasher. I took it serious.
Sure.
That's one of those things where I always had the mindset to master every position I worked at. So when I was washing dishes, I was trying to be the best dishwasher I was. And I didn't take it for granted.
That is such a rare quality these days. I mean, I kind of like work in, the same industry. I have 2 restaurants, and just having someone that wants to do the job to excellence, regardless of what job it is, right? Like that is something that is rare and hard to find in this day and age. Why do you think you had that mindset?
I give the credit to probably my upbringing, my family. They didn't per se like teach me how to, learn these things and not take life for granted. But I was always appreciative to where I was in life, and the family I grew up with, and the love I shared, and the moments, and that led to me working with my dad and seeing how hard he worked for his company. He's been doing cement finishing for 50 plus years, and he really takes his job serious and his craft. And I've never understood that growing up, wondering why, he's doing the trowel machine, the cement finishing at 12 o'clock at night. Wondering why he's getting home 5 o'clock in the morning because he didn't want to leave the cement to, dry or crack or anything like that. So those small things, like he really took his job seriously, and the science that he knew of his job kind of led to me. I think I adopted that same mindset, that work ethic, that same kind of that drive to get it right, especially for when you're cooking for people in the clientele that he was cooking for. He took his guests. You call them customers. People call them customers. I call them guests. I took them seriously in what they wanted. So I think me adopting that and then me trying to stay humble, stay grounded, and not taking life for granted, that's what led me, to take every position seriously. Whether it was dishwashing, whether it was prep cook, whether it was, cement finishing, whether it was Waffle House, I really wanted to kind of, and then not only that, in the back of my brain, I knew it would make me better.
Sure.
So me, the competitive side comes out as in, okay, I'm not in New York City. I'm not a Michelin star chef. I'm not learning under Chef Ramsay. I don't have that kind of opportunity that a lot of New York City chefs or San Francisco chefs have. So what can I do for a young chef trying to make a name for himself? What can I do to kind of, have a leg up, or try to keep up with those guys who does have the opportunities? So I knew if I actually stayed up studying my culinary books, and if I actually literally paid attention and took every opportunity to kind of learn from a dishwasher, from a grit cook, from a Waffle House cook, if I actually took the time to learn all these things, I could be better, if not be on the same level as those chefs, So that's what really drove me to kind of keep learning.
And I think in here it's very important for the audience to hear this. This will always lead to opportunity. Exactly. Especially in this day and age when it's so difficult to find those type of qualities. If you put in the effort, it will get noticed, and it will happen. Yeah. So how did that happen? When did you start getting noticed by kind of like your team over at Emma's?
Yeah. So I remember specifically because, like I said, you have those highlights in your brain of like the greatest moments of your career, and I remember because I appreciate coming up under Jason because he didn't give you what you didn't earn. So he really took the time to embrace me as a young chef or as a young cook. So I remember just keep trying to learn. At this point, I think I'm finally on the line cooking and help plating and stuff like that. And the sous chef was at the saute station. I think Jason was maybe expoing. He was calling out orders or something. And I remember because, I finally found my rhythm.
Yeah.
So I finally, instead of me thinking and me being hesitant and me being timid to plate or do anything, was on a rhythm to I was boom, 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 boom.
Is that confidence? You mentioned rhythm.
Yeah, rhythm. I think it is confidence. I think my confidence finally went up. I think what helps is you do something long enough, and you go home and think about the mistakes long enough, and you get chewed out by the chef long enough that you finally catch on to, all right, maybe I need to do this instead. So I finally found the confidence to it's almost like you're moving and you're cooking without actually thinking.
Yeah.
You're on the rhythm. So the first day I've done that, and Jason was there and the sous chef was there, the sous chef said, "Good job," or something like that. And Jason shook his head, and he was, he said, yeah, you're right, Patrick. You're finally, I think you're finally caught on, or something like that. He said something smart, but it was
How much
cool,
time?
though.
How much time did it take?
It literally took maybe 1 or 2 minutes, like right after. I think it was in the middle of service.
Yeah.
So service starts. We open at 5. Maybe some orders come in, and then the busy time starts around 6, 7 o'clock. We're on the rhythm. I think it was like literally in between service.
Yeah.
To the point where he didn't wait until after service. He didn't wait till the next day. It was literally right there on the spot. They noticed, okay, he's getting better kind of thing. And that really was important because that made me want to get even better.
Yeah, of course.
So it was one of those things where I didn't get complacent. I knew, okay, so this is what I need to do. So as soon as they recognized it, I just took it to a whole nother level.
Love that.
And I think that's what made me kind of, rise in the ranks a little faster than usual.
Yeah.
So, and it helped. It was the best thing you can do is encourage and, give that kind of recognition.
What position did you rise to at Emma's?
So finally, I think it was like 4 or 5 years later, maybe 4. I finally became executive chef of Emma's, and
how'd that feel?
It was amazing. I didn't want it to hit because I didn't want it to get too cocky or confident or complacent, but it did hit me at a certain point, like when I actually had the opportunity to create the whole menu. That's when it finally hit. Not when the manager gave me the general manager of the hotel, he gave me a call, and he kind of explained to me what's gonna happen, and hey, you're the candidate, you're the number 1 candidate, stuff like that. It didn't hit then, but it really hit when I got sat in the chair in the office and talked to the staff about the menu coming up and stuff like that. So that was pretty cool. That was amazing. It was an amazing feeling, especially being at a young age. I was around 22, 23 years old, maybe 22, and being so young and having the opportunity, it was a great feeling. I knew I still had a lot to learn.
Sure.
And I knew that me being a young chef and me being humble and knowing how important Jason Scarborough is, and other chefs like Chef Ramsay. I knew that, I got the executive chef title, but I didn't let that, I'm still not a chef in my own brain. I'm not going to let everybody else know because I'm the executive chef.
Sure.
But in my own brain, I know I'm not there yet, just sure.
So when does that moment come for you? When you kind of like get to the point of like, hey, like I am a chef?
Oh, man. I've always been hard on myself. So if you want to talk about like just Emma's in general, I guess at Emma's my first I am a chef moment was probably
or it can happen after too.
Yeah.
I mean, or maybe it hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. No, it happened like maybe like 6 or 7. Maybe like 6 or 7 years after. Like, I mean, let's see. At the time at Emma's, I had 5-6 years of experience. Like I said, I became executive chef at an early age, and I still knew that I was great. But I had a lot to learn. I still had a lot to learn. I wanted to learn, so I knew I wanted to learn from other great chefs who got 20, 30 years in the business. So I think after I went through a couple resorts and a couple hotels, and I learned other great chefs, and I think finally, when I felt like I got a lot of my stripes, and then I finally became executive chef again, I think that's when it kind of clicked to me.
Yeah.
That, okay, now I have arrived, as a chef. Now I can feel comfortable sitting beside Jason Scarborough or, something like that. So
I compare this a lot to kind of like entrepreneur, right? I have never, ever called myself an entrepreneur before for me, it was until the moment that other people started calling me an entrepreneur. That's when I felt like, I had arrived, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of like how I balanced everything. If because entrepreneur gets thrown in, anybody could be an entrepreneur. Anybody that has, a business up and running. But to me, that kind of like was, I guess, the gateway or the rite of passage, if you will.
Yeah, it was hard because, like you said, when people think of chef, especially nowadays, they think all you have to do is go to culinary school, put on a white chef coat, maybe work in a restaurant, and now you're a chef. And me idolizing other chefs, I knew that wasn't the case. So, I was called a chef early on, especially by my family, because, okay, Patrick's a chef, that's what everybody say. But really, I was working at Waffle House, going to culinary school, and, maybe doing a little prep cooking at Emma's.
Yeah.
And I was still being called a chef, and
Sure.
I knew I wasn't a chef. So that's why I was like, I don't like to downgrade the term chef and just hand it out to anybody.
Sure.
Even if you're in the industry. So I think, I think a chef has certain qualities and certain aspirations and a certain level of chefness that he wants to give to people.
Chefness, let's define that.
Yeah, I know, right?
Let's call it.
Look in the dictionary. But so I didn't want to just become a chef or think I'm a chef at an early age just because I got on a chef coat. So I wanted it to be something that you work for, something that you have to like earn stripes. Because I truly believe that. Gordon Ramsay, I think, if I can remember correctly, I think I heard that Gordon Ramsay, his first restaurant, it took him 10 years to even have an opportunity to become sous chef or something like that.
Sure.
In the same restaurant. Like, this man worked 10 straight years before he even became a prominent part of being a chef.
Yeah. And
he took that seriously. So I'm never gonna like, okay, I'm 2 years in of, cooking, now I'm a chef. No. So.
Sure. Let's catch this up. So now we feel that, we have chefness or chefdom or whatever we want to call it. At what point do you kind of like start this new venture? So this latest venture is you are now private executive chef.
Yeah.
When did that happen?
So that happened like late 2020. I finally, I had the nerve to leave the restaurant industry.
Yeah.
I always say I have.
Why
the
was
nerve.
that scary?
Number one reason why it's scary because you as a human being, especially as an older human being who's married, you have obligations and you have priorities. And as a young man coming up, you have to navigate between going for your dream and working, but having income come in, steady income, especially when you have certain obligations. So that was the number one reason why it was scary because I wasn't on my own. So it was I had a wife. We were talking about settling down, starting a family and getting a house and all that good stuff. So me leaving a steady income for stepping out on my own was,
scary.
Questionable. Yeah, it was questionable. So it was one of those things where, me leaving the restaurant industry and me leaving something I already knew. I knew, at this point I'm 10 years in already. So at this point I'm pretty familiar what I need to do as a chef to get a certain job or go to a certain restaurant, and if I get on to a certain restaurant, I knew how to navigate through those restaurants. So I'm a veteran at this time, so I know what I need to do. So me stepping out on my own and leaving what I knew for something I'm not sure of was kind of questionable.
Let's talk about that, because this channel is really built for entrepreneurs.
Okay,
right?
gotcha. Yeah, beautiful channel too.
Thank you, I appreciate it. What? Let's dive that into that. What made you ultimately take that leap? Because that I think that's the challenge that a lot of entrepreneurs face, right?
Yeah.
Like, I have obligations, I have a family to take care of, and I need to make this choice of leaving this steady income that you already know how to navigate. Even if you went to a different restaurant, you knew how to kind of like get through the ranks, kind of move up.
Yep.
To the point where you're like, I'm taking this leap of faith.
Yeah.
And I'm this is my shot.
Yeah. I think what helped, well, before I get into that part, I think what really helped me lead to that was I've done most of everything I needed to do to know about chefing. So, at this point, I was executive chef a couple times. I was sous chef many times. I worked in a 5-star platinum golf club, so I know what fine dining is. And then I worked in a hotel, so I know what upscale, mass-produced catering is. And then I didn't mention that, before I even left the restaurant industry, there was a small point in time, I think it was like a year maybe. There was a small point in time where I stepped out on my own. I was in between jobs, chef jobs, and I did some catering. So I kind of started trying to do,
experience?
just to,
get your feet wet.
Get my feet wet a little bit. So that kind of, all right. So I knew that what that entailed. So at this point, I've already built up the kind of the mental capacity to know what I'm getting myself into as a chef. So now I'm at a certain level as a chef where I kind of know myself as a chef, what my strengths are, what my weaknesses are, what I kind of like to do and stuff like that. So that kind of helped me.
Self-awareness.
So now that kind of helped me know. So I wouldn't recommend anybody just jump out there without knowing, okay, as a hairdresser, I wouldn't want to just, start my own hairdressing business without working at a few hairdressing places, taking some losses, as a hairdresser. So you have to kind of build that. So I think, me leaving the restaurant industry late 2020 to become a chefpreneur. I call it chefpreneur.
Okay.
So
all these new terms.
Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. So just being a chefpreneur, it helped because I knew what direction I wanted to go. I wanted to kind of work for myself and kind of put my chef brand out there, and then also have the opportunity to kind of work with different people and work with different chefs, not be limited on time or working with different nonprofit organizations or working in the community or stuff like that. So I knew that was what really drove me to kind of make that decision. Was I really wanted to go in the direction I wanted to go in. And really take that leap of faith and, really have time to create a family. And, now we got our first child on the way, our baby girl.
Love it. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. And so it's just one of those things where I kind of knew, at least I wanted to hope, maybe I didn't know, but I wanted to believe that if I left the restaurant industry, I went in my direction I wanted to go in, that finally the doors will open. I wanted to have that kind of, like you said, leap of faith, but it was more of like, I kind of strategized this for years.
Yeah.
I mentally thought about it. Me and my wife talked about it. We strategized it on paper. It went over and over in our heads, how we were going to do this. And I knew that certain doors will open, and it did. More doors than I thought would open, and it was a blessing to kind of have that faith in faith in God, or faith in family, faith in my surroundings. I knew that's what direction I wanted to go in. So
if there are other chefs out there
Yeah.
that are maybe following a similar path, they're working at a restaurant right now. what advice would you give them to do?
Honestly, I would tell them to get their stripes. That's the main thing. I would not recommend it to especially young chefs. Like if you have 3 to 5 years in the industry and you're trying to be a private chef, I wouldn't recommend it because all the 10 to 12 years of experience I have in different restaurants, different caterings, different jobs, it led me to be a better private chef. That led me to become a executive private chef, not just a private chef, but an executive private chef, to where you can, understand the business side of it as well. So my advice would be just get your stripes as a chef per se. Keep working in restaurants. Keep taking crap from your superiors, or keep trying to manage people, which is probably the hardest job in the world in the industry, especially the restaurant industry, is managing different people. Keep trying to learn the science of cooking, not just how to make things look pretty, or even just how to make things taste good. The science of cooking, why things happen the way it happens, why garlic happens at 350 degrees, why it, just learn the science of cooking. It literally made me a better private chef. Now, when anything comes up, especially for me as a private chef, I've had moments many times where my experience had to kick in, as in, some mishaps may happen. Like,
Sure.
I think I burned some bread, or, burned some sauce, how to, get the flavor out of something, how to cook in a short amount of time, because, there was a couple of times I got stuck in traffic, and, dinner has to be done at a certain time. So now I pretty much got an hour to cook for 10 plus people.
Yeah.
And so it was one of those things where me as a chef, I knew what to prioritize to get everything done in a certain amount of time. And I knew how to cook fast, not just fast speed-wise, but fast efficiency.
Yeah.
So I learned my efficiency over the past 10 years to where, okay, I'm going to go in and start the potatoes, get those at a certain point. I know if I get the pot on the stove, as soon as I get in the building, by the time I'm done peeling the potatoes, the water will be at a boil.
Timing.
Throw the potatoes in, keep the potatoes whole, depending on the size. Keep the potatoes whole, because if you keep them whole, the fluffiness will be better once you go to mash them. And then, okay, get the sauce started, get the garlic going, get the, just the small intrigue components that goes into cooking.
That's right.
Like just small things like that, I probably wouldn't have had if I started private chefing 5-6 years ago. So that's what I mean. It's like it made me a better chef, better private chef, better businessman, better. Now, with the company I partnered with, I'm one of the best chefs they have, because I've took my 10 years of experience, I took it to a whole nother level of me taking it serious.
Yeah.
And me learning from, other chefs and the small things. I paid attention a lot. So
yeah.
Definitely. That's the advice I would give.
What, so how do people find you? Like, what is the best way to get in contact with Chef Patrick?
So the main thing would be Instagram.
Okay. What is it?
Chef Patrick White.
Okay.
Chef Patrick White. It's all under one word. Luckily, I got my own website as well.
Okay, which is?
chefpatrickwhite.com.
Let's go.
Yep. Thanks to Jeanquette Sanders White, who built my website. She's my niece-in-law.
Okay.
She has her own marketing company called White Collar Marketing.
Okay.
And she built my website from scratch, and probably the best website that I could have ever dreamed of, because she knew the intricacies that I wanted to kind of have on my website, the cleanness, the everything. So I do have a TikTok, but
let's go.
I'm getting better at uploading videos and doing TikToks. But yeah, Chef Patrick White on TikTok as well. But yeah, you can just find me on all those platforms. You can email me. I do have a partnership with a company called Food Fire Knives. who's a private chef platform. They're great people. It's owned by a former chef. Well, former chef. And then so they're great, and you can find me on foodfireknives.com under Chef Patrick White as well. And we have different chefs and different menus to where you could choose from. And the link is always in my website as well. So, and it's a great opportunity to kind of just be private chef and have those links. And
what's the future hold for your brand? What do you hope to achieve in the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, let's see. I always dream big. That's my main thing. I always gotta shoot for the stars, so to speak. So the main thing would be 5 to 10 years. Let's start with 5 years. 5 years, I have to have my own cookbook.
Okay.
And my own chef comic book.
Okay.
So I'm working on those two things, and then I'm working on my pop-up dinners.
Okay.
Hopefully, starting next year, I will be doing a lot more pop-up dinners. Hopefully get into the rhythm of, I want the pop-up dinners, of course, to be, donation based and go towards the Chef Patrick White brand. But hopefully, once I get in the rhythm and get it to a prominent rhythm of stage I want it to be at, I want the pop-up dinners to become part of the community as well, to where I'm raising money, for whether it's the Boys and Girls Club or the Till House or anything like that. So I wanted to kind of be part of the community. So pop-up dinners, cookbook, chef comic book. I wanted to start my own sauce brand. I'm working on that. Most of the ingredients that I'm going to put in my sauces are going to be from the Statesboro Farmers Market.
Love that.
So, whether it's honey-based or I have a sauce called collard green pesto I'm going to do. So I'm going to take the collard greens from Better Fresh Farms there in Metter, honey from Humble Bumble or other honey companies. Let's see. So just sauce brand, just have a different sauce. I have a sweet potato agrodolce that I'm going to do. So sweet potatoes from Jacob's Produce, hopefully, or anything like that. So sauce brand, pop-up dinners, cookbook, chef comic book. And then
basically you're not going to sleep is what you're saying.
No sleep. But hopefully just doing all that. Then one of the other things, of course, YouTube, getting better at social media, getting better at TikTok. So I had a vision for YouTube and starting my own YouTube page, but I think I'm going to start with the TikTok and expand that, and let the ideas go towards the TikTok and get that built up. But I'm not sure.
I'll say, one of the things about you, Chef, that is very inspiring is I know that whatever it is that you do decide to do, and this kind of goes back to our point earlier, you're going to put your heart and soul into it.
Yeah, definitely.
So no matter if it's a comic book, pop-up dinners, or whatever these things are, I'm super excited to see kind of where all of these different businesses take you. I'm very, very inspired.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, welcome. Thank you so much for coming to the show. And then, man, I'm going to be in contact soon and see what we can cook up.
Well, thank you for having me. And this podcast is amazing.
Thank you.
I do my best to watch it.
Yeah.
And you had some great interviews on here, and even learning from I forgot, you had a barbecue person on here.
Yeah. So I had Papa Bucks.
Yeah, Papa Bucks, and he was talking about how how he started and how he went to other people that own restaurants and learned.
Yeah.
Just ask questions and stuff like that. So that was great, and but I appreciate what you're doing, and thank you. And my last advice, I really wanted to touch on my most important thing that I wanted to give. You asked me about advice to young chefs. The main thing is I've always took lessons very seriously, and like we discussed earlier, learning how to excel at those lessons coming up and take every opportunity that you're presented with. Not opportunities that you want, but opportunities that you're presented with. Take those as learning lessons. Like as a dishwasher, I learned how to become the best dishwasher. I didn't take it for granted. As a person who cooked grits every day, I took that serious. As a Waffle House cook, I took that serious. As a as a cleaning person, I took that seriously. So just learning those different lessons at different that made me a better chef. That made me become the chef I am today. And yeah, just keep learning.
That's a gem, man. I appreciate it. Well, again, thanks for the show, spending some time, and then yeah, super excited. Really stay connected. Go follow Chef Patrick White on Instagram and all the platforms. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Cool, man.
Yes, sir.